Hi and welcome back to the channel. Do you want to know the quickest way to kill the creativity in your guitar playing? Yeah, of course you do. Well, you just watched it. The typical 3 or 4 note sequential patterns that so many guitarists spend hours mindlessly running up down the neck with. And of course, when you do that, you're essentially hardwiring those sort of patterns into your playing. And that's what comes out when you improvise. And frankly, in 2025, I think we've all heard enough of them. It was great back in the 80s when Malmsteen started doing it, but things have moved on. So today, I'm going to show you some techniques, some practice methods to get you out of that run and be more creative with the sort of patterns that you practice. It's going to be a challenge physically and technically, but it will mean that your playing is constantly moving on and new ideas entering into your vocabulary. So if you're ready, let's get stuck in. So a great way of coming up with something you've not played before is to harness the power of the random. No, not some random guy who starts talking to you at the bus stop, but random numbers. So you can do this yourself, but it's probably never going to be random because we'll have our biases and we're pattern-seeking creatures, so we're probably going to do something like that. So here we're going to harness the awesome power of AI and use a few tools to do it for us. Hello, it's VoiceOver Graham here. So what I've done is head over to Chat GPT and I'm asking it to generate random non-repeating numbers between 1 and 7. And I'm going to ask it for 6 of them. And when I can learn to type, it's going to spit out some Python code. So I'm heading over to a Python compiler runner thing, and that's going to give us our numbers. And then we need to take those and convert them into scale tones. So 1 is C, because we're in C major. Then we get 6, which is A. And then it's D, which is 2. And then 4, F. 7, yeah, there's B. And then 3 would be E. And that's the little melodic contour we're going to be playing around with. As always, it's a great idea to sing the line and internalize it. There are different ways to think about a melodic shape like this. So before we go any further, let's go through 4 different ways to visualize this on the neck. Number 1, by scale tones. Okay, so fairly self-evident this one. You're basically labeling the notes according to the scale tones. So once again, it's C is 1, and then A would be 6, then the 2 would be D, and then it's 4 is F, then B7, and E3. Just like that. Intervalically, so here you're thinking about the individual intervals between each of the notes. So going from the beginning, you've got C to A. So that's a 6th, or 6 scale steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can count up and down in between them. And then from there, it's going from the A to D. Now that's 5 steps down. And then it's going to the F, which is 3 steps up. And then it's going to the B, which is 4 steps up. And then it's going down to the E, which is 5 down. So you might think, okay, up a 6th, down a 5th, up a 3rd, up a 4th, and down a 5th. Like so. Right, internal structures. So what do I mean by that? Well, simply, even though the line is drawn at random, there's a good chance there'll be things within it that you already know. And you can use these to reduce the amount of information you're having to think about. So for instance, in this line, between starting on the third note in the sequence, the D, it's doing a first inversion triad, diminished in this case, but obviously it'll change to major and minor as you sequence up and down. So I can think about those groups of notes as a shape of something I already know, and that simplifies the thinking of it because you're not thinking about 3 individual notes, you're thinking of a grouping that you're already familiar with. String note position. So here we're thinking about the layout, the arrangement of the notes in relation to 3 notes per string. So yeah, normally you're thinking 3 notes on each string. and you can sort of categorize those as the first note, the middle note, and the end note. And this is quite a powerful way of conceptualizing lines and moving them around, particularly if you've got diatonic knowledge under your belt. So in this instance, it'd be the first note of the bottom string, in this case, well, not my bottom string, sixth string, the C anyway. Then the end note of the next string up, then back to the middle note, then the first note on that string, first note on that string, and then the end note on that string. So you're thinking in terms of where things fall in relation to the particular scale shape that you're sat in. So the object of the first exercise is to move the shape up and down diatonically, that is within the key, in position. So we're not going to move left and right along the neck, we're going to go straight across. And that means you're going to start from the first note on each string, then the middle, then the end. And of course that means the intervals that make it up are going to have to be different in terms of the way you play them. So for instance, the opening interval of a sixth can be played either like that, on adjacent strings, or with a string skip like that. And similarly, all the other intervals. So if we take the first pitch, we're going from A. Okay, and you can see that in the tab. And then if we go from the next note up, that'd be from D. Now the sixth is now going to be skipping a string. Because, yeah, can't really reach that without stretching. We don't want to do that. And then the next note up, the second, or the third in the row is now there. You can see there I've got a first inversion C major. That's that internal structure. There we go. And then we do it from the last note of the string, it would be there, the E. And again, that's going to be a string skip to get to the sixth upward. Yeah, that's it. Now that third, which was crossing a string previously in the triad, is now on with the string. Like that, and that drop of a fifth at the end is like that. Okay, and then we're ready to go from the next string, which is going to be back to the same kind of layout of notes. Not identical because the tritone and different major minor intervals are at play. So, oops. So that end fifth interval is now skipping a string. There you go. And then, there's that triad, first inversion. Down a fifth, but it's the tritone because it's B as F down to B. And then so on. You just keep going like that. So next we do the inversion line. So we've literally flipped it upside down. So the first one is now C going down a sixth to E, and then up a fifth to B, and then down a third to G, and down a fourth to D, and then up a fifth to end. Like that. So as we move that down, we're going to go from the middle note, and that's going to go to the end note, jumping a sixth down. See that triadic element, and then up a fifth, and then down from the A. Okay, and then it's G. Again, you see we've had the triad in two different ways there, and so and it's going up 5 steps, but of course it's a tritone because it's F to B, so that's it. And again, keep working your way down the same way. Like so. So no tab for this, you really got to figure it out by the intervals, using your ear and the notes. No shortcuts. So there you have it, that's the first exercise. And like all of these things, it's scalable. If you need it to be easier, use fewer notes in the sequence, maybe 3 or 4. If you need it to be harder, use more. That was just done over 1 octave. You could do it over 2 in which case you'll be using numbers 1 through 15. And it's up to you how you use it. You do the inversions, all that sort of stuff. Again, don't limit yourself to what's in that little exercise. Now that one is purely diatonic, i.e. we're just staying within a key. The next one is chromatic. And here we're going to take the same shape, but this time move it in chromatic steps, by which I mean cyclic patterns. So in this case, we're going to go through in minor thirds. So each time you do it, it's going to be in another key effectively. And this in minor thirds, that's going to spell out the diminished chord, which again is a very common technique. You could also do it with the augmented. So that'd be major thirds, and you'd get 3 repetitions through an octave, 3 different key centers. This is a really important one. Apparently Michael Brecker practiced this one a lot. Sax players do tend to do these type of exercises, but guitarists don't. Now this is very useful for developing your understanding of the relation from one key center to another, and being equally comfortable in whatever tonal setting you are in. So let's dive in. So for this exercise, we're moving in a chromatic cycle, in this case minor thirds. So if we're starting on C, that's going to give us 4 different key centers, spelling out a diminished 7th chord. So that'd be C, E flat, F sharp, A major. So we know the one for C. Okay, E flat, well, where's the E flat coming from? Well, straight away I can see it's under my 3rd finger. Okay, we'll do that major 6 interval, and then I can go down to 5th, and then I need an A flat, D, down to G. So you can see the layout of the notes there is different. Okay, next up, F sharp. Well, the nearest F sharp is under my 1st finger here, so I'm going to do the major 6 like that, and then down on 5th, from the D sharp to G sharp, B, E sharp to A sharp down to 5th. Right, cool. Next up, A, sitting under my 3rd finger, so let's use that. Major 6th, skipping a string, and then it's down to 5th, and then we got a minor 3rd to D, tritone to G sharp, down a perfect 5th to C sharp. Okay, and then we can just go from C again. Like so. You can also do major thirds. Of course, you get only 3 different key centers there, but equally useful one to practice. Okay, that's it for today. I hope these tips help you break free of these old patterns and bring some fresh creativity to your playing. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments if you found it useful and what other things you used to develop this side of your playing, and also what other subjects you might want me to cover. Thanks for watching and keep creating.